Kimberly Gladden, Director of Discipleship. I want to welcome you to today's Discipleship webinar. We've got a great conversation planned today as we discuss intentional discipleship. What does it mean to be purposeful about discipleship? We're also streaming live from Facebook and YouTube. And if you'd like to enter the conversation, and we hope you do, we have a chat room on YouTube. And so you can ask questions, offer comments. It would be great to hear your thoughts. And you can share them by commenting in the chat room, which will be on YouTube. My co-host for today is Reverend Dan Walker. Dan, I'm so glad that you've agreed to be here. Dan is working with us on some social holiness initiatives, and I've asked Dan to sit in, and he's graciously agreed, as he usually does. Thank you.
Great to be here.
We have two special guests today as we talk about intentional discipleship. We have Reverend Wes Dupin, pastor of Daybreak Church in Hudsonville, Michigan, and we're welcoming Wes and all of his years of experience in evangelism to this conversation. And we also are welcoming Reverend Scott Moore, the pastor of First Wesleyan Church in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And he's going to bring youthful enthusiasm and cutting some new pathways in discipleship. So glad to have you both here for today's conversation. You know, as we begin our discussion, I want to just remind us of the 5 discipleship prompts. Regardless of this discipleship model that you're using, there are 5 questions that we are proposing you ask about the discipleship culture in your church. Is it intentional, relational, holistic, multiplying, and lifelong? And today we want to just zero in, focus in on that first prompt, which is discipleship being intentional. And I want to jump into our discussion with just a sobering comment that I found on discipleship.org. It was just a few days ago they posted this, and it said there are no true disciple-making movements in North America right now. And they said that statement may come as a surprise, but it's the conclusion of most, if not all, missions experts, that we have mere sparks of movements in the United States and Canada, but no true movement-making fires. And then they asked the question of those who posted that, what is the one thing the disciple-making movement leaders practice in other places around the world that we don't do in North America? Because they're seeing those things in other places. And the answer was a strong emphasis on prayer and fasting. And that's what Jerry Truesdale and Glenn Sunshine wrote in discipleships.org's new sampler, The Kingdom Unleashed. The Kingdom Unleashed. And so today we want to just talk about that. I believe that I believe we will not see a disciple-making movement in North America until we lay a foundation of long, intense prayer. And whether you agree or disagree with that quote, I think it brings us right to this issue of intentionality in discipleship. We have 2 practitioners with us today who are going to come maybe from different angles but both believe in the concept of being intentional about discipleship. And so, Scott, I'm going to start with you. Scott, when I say intentional discipleship, what comes to mind?
Kim, Dan, thanks for having me today, and it's good to be with Wes, who, as I shared this post earlier, I said, it feels weird coming on with someone like Wes because he's the man, and I'm just a short time into this, so we'll try to walk through this together. But I'll say first that I don't think we can talk about anything until we do buy into this idea of prayer, like you said. Like, we can talk models, we can talk ideas, we can talk our wirings, our context for our culture, but if prayer's not going to be the foundation of it, then we just might as well not do it. So we have to start from there. But we do have to ask ourselves the question about discipleship and what way we're going to go about it. And how I've kind of viewed this is, in the past, I felt like the questions that people were asking were like, what do we want people to know? Or what do we want people to do? And I get it. I get that question. But I guess when it comes to discipleship, I more look at it is, what do they want to become, and how do we get them there? That's kind of the basis of how I think about discipleship is what do I want them to become, and how do we get them there? And so there's a lot of models that can work from that, but then it just comes out of what really you're passionate about and where you feel like you can lead your people. And so once you kind of decide where you want people to go, then that kind of forces you to know the end game and then work your way back. And so that's kind of the mindset behind intentionality, is when you know where you want them to, what you want them to become, that forces you to say, okay, that's the end game. Now let's go back and develop a plan to get them there.
Scott, I hear even in your answer just kind of an intentionality about kind of tweaking the question that we're asking as we come to discipleship. What do you want them to become? But how does this unfold like at your church? What does this look like at your church?
Okay, so it's holistic, hopefully, not just a one program thing. And you guys have done a good job to open up the conversation with discipleship, that is not just done through, say, typical small groups, Sunday school, these learning environments, but discipleship is big. And so I could talk about a lot of things and cultures we're trying to build with for discipleship. For instance, we do a thing that we had started this year in the transition and me becoming lead pastor called Discover Track. And Discover Track is a 3-week kind of walkthrough journey with our new people, or you could have been here for a while if you wanted, but our new people, where the first week is Discover Us. And this is a process of figuring out what our church is about. We want to get people in our lane and going with us so we can find unity in our values and our beliefs in the Wesleyan Church, and kind of give some background. And the second time we meet is Discover God, and this is more the theological stuff. We don't get super deep in this context, but it gives the basis of we're all on the same page of what our beliefs are. And then the third one is Discover You, and this is where we want to walk through how you were created, what you were created for. A sentence you hear me say all the time here, I've just always said it, is you're created on purpose for a purpose. And so we want to help you see what you're created for, that was designed by God, that you're created for, and then not just what you're going to do, but how you're created to worship and connect with Him. So I guess we can launch it from there. As our Discover Track allows us to go down that first journey of discipleship with them.
It's good. And Scott, and at First Wesleyan, as I come from the perspective of social holiness, for me, the first question I want to ask you, I see you guys do Love Week, which was just a few weeks ago, right? And then Serve Tuscaloosa, which seems to be an ongoing opportunity for people to serve the community and get involved. So would you talk to us a little bit about that specific piece of the holistic discipleship plan? What does outreach, what does service, how does all that come together in the effect of the process of discipleship?
Yeah, so once again, like I give you the Discover Track to begin with, but it's just a piece, because we're trying to help people become something. And hopefully that in the end, the simple answer is, well, we want them to become like Jesus. But so I asked the question, what do I want them to become? Well, I see in Jesus, he says he came to serve, not be served. Yep. So that's a component of our discipleship. And so I'll give you the quick story, if you'd like, is we transitioned from an event called Easter Fest to an event called Love Week. And this came out of the end game intentionality of knowing we wanted to create people and a church that were servant-minded, that we are a church that models for the next generation, for millennials coming up, that they can be part of a church that's active in their community. They're known for their service, not just come and experience, but we'll go to you and serve. And so we're putting on an Easter Fest event that costs us quite a few $1,000s, just many. And we were reaching 5,000 or 6,000 people with this event this Saturday before Easter. But what was happening is we weren't experiencing the outcome of a connection. We had the event, but really the residual effects, the ripple effects in our community. And so we started looking, is this creating what we're trying to help people become, this one-time event? And quite honestly, I quickly said, no, it isn't. So for us, an event that reached 5,000 or 6,000 people looked good on paper, but it wasn't reaching the goal. It wasn't the why we existed as a church. And so when that transition was made in June, where I became lead pastor, I let our church know after 9 years we wouldn't be doing Easter Fest anymore, which became a cultural identity for us, even in the community. But we were going to change to Love Week. And what that did was we would have 2, 3, several hundred people from our church volunteer in 17 to 20 different organizations in our community over a week's time leading up to Easter. And that was through schools, that was through local ministries, that was through just local organizations. It was, the list is long, right? So we put money into service versus an event. Now, I want to be really clear, like that doesn't mean events aren't good. It just was, we had to decide why we existed, what were our goals. and how did we want to spend that money to create the kind of church and to help our people become more like Jesus. And so for us, that was the answer. And so Love Week happened. It was great. We created a lot of bridges, and we created a lot of relationships in our community for that, and hopefully developed a continued culture of being a service-oriented church, which leads into Serve Tuscaloosa. That's where this week came out of that ministry, that department. Is monthly, we give our people opportunities to see and experience what people are doing in our community. There are great people in Tuscaloosa. There are great ministries in Tuscaloosa. And we just want to say, hey, you're doing great. We believe in you. And we want to come as kind of like an army behind you and say, we buy into what you're doing, and how can we help you become better? And in the process, our people get to experience great ministry. And so it's more than that 1 month event. It's maybe they loved it so much that becomes a resource for an outlet for their service. And so once again, we're creating people who have a mind of service in our community, because that's part of our missions. That's just one component. That's our serve local side of it. And then from there, it just goes to serve national, serve global, and continues that process of discipleship. And so we have a whole strategy with missions itself. And where Love Week and Serve Tuscaloosa comes out of is a phrase we say, we want people to see, we want people to feel, we want people to act. It's see, feel, act, and it comes from 1 John 3, 16 and 17, and I don't need to preach right now. You can read that scripture, but those words are in that. So see, feel, and act is how our service is played out in our local, in our nation, in our world.
Fantastic.
Scott, do the people at the church see this as a part of discipleship? Do they, and when there's the service piece, are they seeing this as a part of discipleship or the discipleship process? Tell me, talk a little bit more about that.
People would use the word discipleship. That's kind of a church word. That's kind of a webinar word. But in reality, they more see it as an outlet of just connecting with their heart, that they see Jesus modeled this, and this is more the vision, is Jesus modeled this. We're just following. You know, one of the values we have is we follow Jesus and we invest in others. So I see people just living out that in their life. You know, and another one we would say around here is that we will do whatever it takes so the world will know. That falls into that. Or we say we serve to show our love and to make a difference. I mean, we have these phrases that cultivate their mind, so they don't say, oh, I'm being discipled. They just know, oh, this feels right. This is leading me to become a better version of me, because at the core, I guess, is what I would believe is everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to be significant. Everybody wants to be a better version of themselves. They most of the time just don't know how to get there. So our role as a church, I think, is to walk that process with them, and not just in huge leaps, but it's little leaps, and it's little places where, hey, here's a way you can see Christ move in you, and he's doing something in you so he can do something through you in the world. And I just think people hunger for that, and we're just giving them avenues to play that out. But I don't think they'd say discipleship. I just think they'd say it's awesome, and they feel great, and it feels right. Because I think that in discipleship and becoming like Jesus, that's what it does. It feels right.
What I was trying to get at, Scott, this is a part of the process then at your church. This is like normative.
Yeah. And normative. Absolutely. It's who we are. It's not something we do. It's who we are. But when building culture of discipleship, you have to do things over and over and over again. Discipleship processes are not one-hit wonders. You don't get lightning in a bottle with discipleship. For me, I'd say sometimes, like, I'm a broken record. Like, even on Sunday mornings, I'll be like, I'm going to say it again, but understand, you guys have to get used to this with me. You're created on purpose for a purpose. We're going to help you, lead you there. Where I'm going to say again, we serve to show our love, to make a difference. You know, we say these values over and over, and people who are part of the process don't always know what's going on per se, like the intentionality. All they see is consistently singing the same tune, consistently beating the same drum over and over and over again, until it's not something that we have to do, it's something that we are. And that's why, for me, it's not what do we know, what do we do, it's what do we want them to become, so let's help them get there.
That's great. This act of intentionality in terms of even changing the direction of, say, a beloved
Oh yeah,
beloved
big deal.
sacred cow at your church.
Yeah.
What? And then you changed direction intentionally. You focused in on actually going out into the community. What's been the response? What has been the result of that intentionality?
So first, I've had this question from people, and I first have to say you have to be convinced of your why so that when you deliver it, people feel the sincerity and the passion and the there's something behind you doing it that yes, I want to jump on board versus hey, here's an idea, let's try this. And so when the change happened, I attacked it with this like this is important. I believe in it, and for me, I serve in a church that bought in, and they say, Scott, we'll follow you. We see how this can be important. So I think it depends. You're selling it, your vision casting of it makes or breaks this from the beginning. And if your people trust you, they know that you're trying to love the community, be more like Jesus, whatever word you want to use. I've experienced people say, yeah, I want to follow you in this. So from First Wesleyan standpoint, Tuscaloosa, maybe I just have an amazing church that I've fallen in love with. But they're bought in, and they're willing to go with it if there's a why that can be expressed. And oftentimes when we try to make these huge changes, we blame it on people for not going with you. But the reality is, I think most people, they know the why behind it, and they hear the conviction. And majority, not always, I mean, we know people are people, but people want to be part of something significant. And if they feel that in you, they should go with you if they trust you. And then when it comes to the community, one of the things I was kind of nervous, or not nervous about, I was kind of maybe sad, is through Easter Fest, we would be on front page of the newspaper. Like we would be front page, we'd be talked about, we would have this talked about all over Facebook. And it was like a big deal in our community. It wasn't big enough for me to not change it, but I was sad. I'm like, we're not going to get this anymore. But I'll tell you a quick story is the one of the lead guys at the newspaper emailed me and said, hey, we hear Easter Fest, is it going on? Can you tell me? And so I was going to email him back and say, no, we decided to go a different direction. Well, then I thought, well, he gave me his phone number. I'm going to call him. And so I called him and I said, we aren't doing it. We realize this is a big deal, but this is what we're doing. Next thing I know, I hear tap, 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 tap. And I can hear him writing stuff down. And so I said, man, I don't know what you can do and not, but I would love for you to tell the community about Love Week, because this comes out of our heart of who we are. This is not an event for us. This is who we are as people. This is what we want to be known for. Next thing I know, the very next morning, it was online in Tuscaloosa News. And then there was another thing later that week. And then later or after the event next week, there was another article. I thought, oh my goodness, like God, you blessed this in a way that the newspaper even grabbed a hold of this vision. I mean, I don't know if this person was a Christian or not, but he got Jesus from me on the phone. And he's like, I get it, man. This is really good. And so they grabbed a hold of it. And so the community embraced it. Our church embraced it. And I personally, I think it's because it was God-induced. And so we ran with it.
That's awesome. And Scott, what I'm hearing from you is that intentionality must require conviction and extreme purpose. So. I think that's a good word, that oftentimes we come with an intentional idea or process, but we don't have the conviction or the true depth knowledge of why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. And we roll it out, and it doesn't roll very far because it lacks that intentionality, the hard work, the 75% of the work done before rolling out, the hard work that's done before that. That's real good stuff. And I want to ask you towards that end. You had mentioned that you just became the lead pastor in June, but you've been with the church for 13 years or so, right?
Yeah. 2005, I moved here.
Great. So in that process, you served in many roles, and I want to ask you about the intentionality of discipleship that you experienced from the church and from the church leadership. Did you find that you had to press in and work towards that goal, or was there an intentional discipleship for you in moving forward to bring you to the place of lead pastor at this point? What was that experience like for you over the last 13 years? And follow up with that, what are you doing for the next generation of leaders coming behind you as well?
Yeah, so I have to always give credit to mentors that went before me, even beyond here. In college, it started with a guy named Darren Campbell. who invested in me. And then another guy I give credit to is a guy named Brian Bradford, who invested in me, moved here. And Dick Emery was the one who hired me. He was no longer the pastor after a couple years, and Joel Gorvet came in here. And the process of me going from student ministries pastor to, we call it the community life pastor, it's adult ministries, to executive pastor, to lead pastor, really came because Joel was a type of leader who wanted to trust and believed in me. And so part of the process was him letting me explore even who I was. And when I had questions, he was always there for availability. I surround myself with people who invest in me now, people like Tom Harding or Ken Murphy at Cypress in Ohio, like people that speak into my life and are always ready for me. So part of my discipleship I really do give credit. People have built into me to help me through working my way up. And so for me, that's a high value that not just locally, but other pastors. I love getting those phone calls. I love getting those text messages. I love hey, how can I invest in you? Obviously, I can't do it with everybody. Obviously, time is limited. You have to be choosy. But I want that to be part of, if you need something, Scott wants to serve you. I think that's where the servant mindedness in the church comes out, is my heart. I saw people serve me and help me grow. I want to be there. So I hope I'm that way for our staff, with our executive pastor, James Matchett, that we are always trying to intentionally help grow our staff so that they can pour into other people. So I don't know if that answers it or not, but it's just a continuation process of investment. If we're not investing in someone and being invested into, our personal discipleship is being shortchanged. And so for me, I'm being invested from top, and then I want to be an outlet as well to other people.
That's great.
Again, that intentionality, that plan, that, going to make this happen. You had a quote, Scott, and I don't know if you remember this, but I found it. So I want you to talk about it.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Okay, here we go. You ready? You said, the mission is discipleship. What did you mean by that? What's that?
Okay, I don't know where I said it, but let me just figure out mission, discipleship. So I don't want to be a broken record, but for me, the reason I'm a pastor is not to grow a large church. My reason I'm a pastor is to change lives. And so discipleship is how you change lives. It starts with where Wes will talk in a bit. He's the master of the outreach. Like I've watched him over the years of just how do we become more like Daybreak? And that's the beginning part of, we change lives. We have to reach people on the front end. And then we just begin to walk that journey through life with people. That's why the Discover Track's important, why the mission's important. We do have small groups. We invest in something called Right Now Media that we give to our people, that they can have a resource every single day in their lives, things for their kids. We do Orange ministry in our next generation ministry, so parents can walk through our kids. Like, we do all things we can so we can walk that journey with people, because our mission is to change lives. And that's not one message for me. That's a lifestyle of walking the journey with people. And so I know that I can't do that personally. I've got a capacity, I've got a bandwidth, I've got a lid on how many people I personally can do that. So for us, it's creating structure and processes that allows to multiply that in our church. You guys talk about multiplication a lot. I think multiplication has to happen in your church first, and then you can multiply outside the church. If you're not multiplying disciples in it, then you definitely can't do it in multiple locations or whatever. And so for me, that mission is, I'm helping you become something. And that to me is discipleship.
Well,
maybe that's what I meant.
you know what you meant. No,
you brought
that's
it back
good.
Together well.
That's good. That's good.
And Scott, I have
one
one follow-up question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. No, you guys said that once again. I'm a big end game person. If I don't know my end game, then I don't know what I'm going after. So 2009, 2010-ish, I think it was Simon Sinek came out with the book Why, and then subsequently he had videos on YouTube and stuff. And from that point on, it's like, yeah, this why directs everything I do in ministry. If I can't say why, it's almost like I want to be like a little kid. I want to be that annoying 2-year-old that goes, why? Like, why are we doing? And if we don't continually ask the why, then we just do things. We would still be doing Easter Fest if I didn't ask why. We'd still be doing some other things we're doing in missions if I didn't ask why. We wouldn't be doing Discover Track if I didn't ask why. Like, why brings up all these things so then we can get to, oh, that's why we're doing it, and we're creating or helping people become this. So sorry, Dan, go ahead with your follow-up.
No, it's good. You mentioned in the beginning of what we were just sharing about a limited bandwidth.
Yeah.
I'm sure most of us who have a pastor's heart, we wish we could disciple everybody individually, right? But I think there is this belief and idea within all of us that believes in the priesthood of all believers, right? That it is not the vocational pastors and leaders who are doing the work of the ministry. It is the priesthood of believers, right? Yet I also see that in almost all of those same people who say we believe in the priesthood of all believers, we don't execute ministry like it is a priesthood of all believers. So can you talk a little bit, you brought up this idea of having limited bandwidth, but can you talk a little bit about how the intentionality is there with not just putting systems and structures in place and Discover Track and those, but how does that translate into empowering every believer, every follower of Christ in the church to fulfill their active role in ministry, to stand up under that call of God themselves? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think this is an ongoing process that everybody's asking that question. How do I do it? And I wouldn't say, like, I've got the perfect program for it, but I'll begin again. This is just me. This is what you get with me. It's not a program. It's a culture. I love building culture. Culture is everything to me. And then we go from there to what are we going to do now? And for me, the very first series I did when I took over leadership last June was a series called Everyday Heroes. And the theme behind that was, I said, I'm an everyday pastor leading everyday people, joining God in this extraordinary mission to change the world, change people's lives, and change the world. And so from the very beginning, I wanted to start it with, this is not about a superhero pastor. This is about a pastor that loves you, wants to serve you, wants to resource you, wants to join you. But this is you as well. Our everyday people can change the world. So I started that way because out of a core belief that we are in this together. And so we can go at this from programmatically. I'm just not wired that way. I just don't think that way. I think, what am I trying to become? Then we can give the outlets. And so it had to start there with first conversation. This is who I am. This is who you are. We're created on purpose for a purpose. You're living it out. So don't ever underestimate the cultural words that you keep telling your people every single week, that we're, as pastors, sometimes we want to move on to the next thing, or we forget or walk away from something that if we could cement in our people, it would make much more of a difference than the next program. So I prefer to keep hitting the same notes, the same rhythms that people say, okay, yes, we're in this together. I would say that it's through our small groups. Obviously, everybody has that, where it's, hey, we can't teach every group. We can't disciple every group. You've got to join us and do it. When it comes to, say, Palm Sunday, we had a message. And I'm just giving you ideas of how to do it. I don't know exactly how it answers this question, but in our sanctuary, there's a huge map of Tuscaloosa County. And we did a message on Jesus coming the donkey and responses that we should have to him and whatever. That message is always online. But people were writing on Post-it notes during service, during communion and different, it's a whole thing, to write names and put it on the map in the back of the room. And we keep that map there. I keep that map there to remind you that your mission is every single day, that you're going to change lives with the power of Jesus through you, that there are people you have to reach. And here is the imagery that's going to do it. It's not one program. We do it through service. We do it through small groups. We do it through Sunday. Like, there's so many outlets. And I prefer to say, hey, we're in this together versus, hey, here's the one way you can do it. So that may not be the specific answer you're going for, but with me, I'm going to give you more of a, this is a lifestyle answer, this is a culture answer, versus, hey, here's the way you can do it. Yes, we could give business cards and hand it out. Yeah, that's great. Good idea. You can do special marketing, and you can do, like, all kinds. People have great ideas. I'm not the most creative person in the world, but I do love building culture, and that's where I'm going to invest my time. And then as staff or church people have ideas of how to reach, we go, okay, let's do that. So I'm going to be less ideas and more culture. So that's where I come from.
Awesome.
Scott, we hear your heart leading intentionally. Listen, a question has come in from our chat room, and someone asked, what is the seek, feel, act scripture? So
sorry.
that's a question
Just
that's come in as we wrap up this segment.
It's just for clarity. See, feel, act. See, feel, act is 1 John 3:16 and 17. Okay, 1 John 3:16 and 17. Would you like me to read it or not? Do you want me to keep going? I can pull it up, but it was a message you can see online from March 18th, I think. If you want to see my message, we talked about missions that Sunday, and I was giving a vision for how we were going to do missions, and it's going to come out of see, feel, act. And so the verse there is, this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. So this is where it starts. We know what love is. We've already seen it with Jesus. We're following Jesus. He's already set the example. We ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. This is where we come from in mission. So then it says, if anyone has material possession and sees his brother in need. Okay, that's where it starts. We have to see. That's why as a church, we put forward to our people, see this need. Like you have to, if you don't see it, then nothing happens. So as a church, my job is to help you see the need. And then it moves to, and has no pity on him. Well, pity, I just changed to feel. But this idea, you need to see it, but then it should move you. It should move you to feel this compassion. See a need, feel compassion, and then how can you have no pity on him? How can the love of God be in him? How can love God? Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in the truth. So we go see the need, feel compassion, act in love. So that's our missions. Hey, you got to see it, you got to feel it, you got to act it, everything. When I speak on Sundays, when I'm on a webinar, see this, feel it, and then act from there. And that's how we lead. So see, feel, act.
We feel you. We do feel you. We see you. And so thanks for answering. Hey, we just want to tell others, continue to come on in that chat room with your questions, your comments. We're going to transition now. So happy and so thankful that Wes Dupin is with us today. And Wes, I want to start our segment by asking the same thing that we started with Scott. What comes to mind for you when we begin to talk about discipleship being intentional? What's the first thing that comes to mind, Wes?
The first thing that comes to my mind after I say thank you, Kim, for allowing me to be a part of this program, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Scott. I feel like I've been to school again, and I've learned so many new things already just listening. When you ask that question, I think the first thing I think about is when I was 17 years of age and led a young lady to Christ, and my discipleship started in that period of my life in a special way, and I'll talk about that more later.
And that whole concept too of intentional discipleship, when we think about Daybreak Church, there are just so many wonderful things that are happening there. How does this kind of look? How does this whole concept of being intentional in discipleship, how does that kind of unfold there at Daybreak?
You know, Kim, I go back to when I was in high school, and for the first time in my life, I was taught how to share my faith. In fact, I learned to use what was called then the Roman road, starting with Romans 3:23, Romans 6:23, Romans 5, so forth. But in that same experience, I was also taught how to follow up an individual. And over the years of working for my dad, who was a crusade evangelist, I taught literally tens of thousands of people, not only to lead people to Christ, but to follow them up. In fact, I brought this little book. I dug it out knowing we were going to do this little seminar here today. And I've used this thousands of times. When a person gives their life to Christ, we would go through 5 lessons with every new believer. Finding Christ. What does it mean to find Christ? What does our faith in Christ look like? What does it mean to grow in Christ? What does it mean to be obedient in Christ? And then sharing Christ. Then when, after 15 years of working in crusade evangelism, I felt led to leave that particular part of my life and to start a church. And Wayne Schmidt was the person who gave me that invitation to move to Michigan. And I didn't have any fancy discipleship programs, but we started with Navigators 2.7, and in those first few years, we used their material, and it was a great little textbook that we used. And then over the years, in fact, the last few years, with my staff and my elders, we've really been pushing Mike Breen's book, Building a Discipling Culture. And I really think what Scott has been teaching here is exactly what we've been attempting to do. I'm not sure that we've always accomplished that, but really developing a culture that is organic, that it's a part of our nature. And that's what we've been doing for the last several years. Does it work all the time? No. Has it always been what I'd like for it to be? No. But we're seeing a lot of good things happen, Kim, as a result of not only leading people to Christ, but to follow Christ.
That's great. And Wes, Dan here, just want to thank you as well for joining us today. We're glad to have you with. And I think that's a good transition. We have the Organic Outreach Conference coming up that's being hosted at Daybreak. So will you talk a little bit about the conference, the intentionality there? And we've heard from you already that it was essential in your life of discipleship, and that intentionality needs to be there with seeing others come to Christ. What has been the process or some of the impact upon the local church and the people in participating in that, in living out that organic discipleship?
Well, I'm going to kind of go in a little bit of a circle here. First of all, I do want to say just a commercial word about Organic Conference. We had a pastor here in our community by the name of Kevin Harney. Dr. Kevin Harney pastored a Reformed church. And I met him in a Blackaby pastors conference. And just kind of in a jesting way, I said, do you believe in evangelism? And Kevin said, I certainly do. And we have become best friends, starting with that word of evangelism. A few years ago, he moved to Monterey, California, and one of the things that Kevin started out of his church there was an evangelism conference. And I was a part of the very first one when there was only about 15 of us. And in that conference, I really learned how to connect my faith with people that could care less about church, people that could care less about anything spiritual in one sense. And I thought, for today, this is where we need to move. And so I brought this back to our leadership. And in turn, over the last few years, I've actually been paying for our staff to make a trip. Many times a ticket would cost $500-600, plus the conference was $500. And then I said, Kevin, how can we have this conference at our church and for the Midwest and for people that have never experienced it here on the West Coast? And so we're hosting the very first one here in the Midwest at Daybreak. I'm looking at the dates here: Thursday, April the 26th, Friday, April the 27th. And this is at seminary level. It's 2 very intensive days. He has brought the price down to $299. And for 2 days, a person is going to walk out of here with 3 wonderful books, a textbook, and then their organization will coach your church into developing a strategy. And they will do this over the next 3 years. And they've done this with us. They will call me and say, how are you doing? And over the next 3 years, regardless of the size of your church, they're going to coach you into a lifestyle of evangelism. Well, now we've got that happening, and so it's very important for us to follow that up with a discipling culture. And so we are working on that right now. In fact, we're restructuring several things in our own staff to train all of our lead staff to be disciplers, as well as people that are evangelists. And I'm excited about that. And I need to come back to you for just a moment here. What was the back part of your question there, Dan?
Just the impact on the local church. I feel you've had an outreach focus, and what has been the effect upon the people in being in a large and growing dynamic church environment where participation in that outreach has been a part of the DNA of the church?
Well, I think every pastor likes to brag about their Easter, because you do work hard to have a Super Bowl Sunday and Easter and all of that. But we do several things here. I try to give an invitation at some point in every message that I deliver. Now, oftentimes there's no response that we know of. Other times there might be 5 people, 10 people, 15 people. I've had services where there've been, again, no one. But we have an environment or a culture of where if you come to Daybreak, there's going to be an opportunity for a person to give their lives to Christ. Now, we do that in many different fashions. It could be a raise of a hand. It could be a person at the back of the auditorium. It could be come forward or whatever. But I'll just tell you a little bit about what happened here over Easter weekend. We had, our service was pretty well geared around Revelation 3:20, and my message behind me was a large door. Now, we've used different objects in the past. We've had a walk across the bridge. This year it was walk through the door. And that door does not have a handle on the outside. The handle is only on the inside. And so Jesus knocks at the door, and he says, I'd like to come in. And if you'll let me in, I'll come in and have a relationship with you. I'll have fellowship with you. And so the whole message was geared in this direction. So as a result, when they came forward up on the stage, and there was a door that they had to literally open up, I gave them this key. This little key has a cross in the center. I always like to give little objects, mementos. I've given baseballs. I've given rocks. I've given crosses. I've given candles. You name it, I probably have given it. People love little mementos. I had a businessman the other day. He said, you remember when you gave those baseballs out? I still have mine on the desk with the date that I made a decision to follow Jesus. And he says, it reminds me every day. Well, this is one. In fact, it had an actual necklace where they could wear it around their neck like a cross or whatever. We gave out hundreds of these. In fact, I'm holding here decision cards, 279. And I'm pretty strong about, we'd like to have a name. We don't want to just say how many, raise your hand. And I'm for that too. But actual get names. Now, these people right here, they'll be followed up. For years, we used what we call a getting started packet, kind of like this. Inside, there's the Gospel of John, which is a little book like this. And there's a DVD in there, kind of a little message from me, just some steps an individual can take. We're not going to get everybody to come back. We know that. There are people that are just visiting that Sunday. They're going on their way to another church, or maybe not a church, but we're going to give this to them or send it to them in the mail. And then there's several things in our DNA. Everything that we do is pointing that person to growing in Christ. Everything. For example, membership. Our membership class is really a discipling class. They don't know that. We call it membership, ownership. And that person would come to that class, and the last 5 minutes is really an invitation to accept Christ. I would say half of the people who come to our membership or ownership class have no relationship with Christ. And at the end, all of these individuals are paired with a staff person, an elder on our board, and for the next 10 or 15 minutes, there's a little bit of an interview. We ask them their story, and if they don't know Christ, right then and there, we lead them to Christ. Then the next thing, of course, is our baptism, which is coming up in a few weeks. And from Easter, we'll have a lot of baptisms. But many of the people here, their baptism is not the kind of baptism that we experience often as, people in the Wesleyan tradition. Many of them think of their baptism as when they were infants. And so we don't knock that. We say that's fine. But this is believers' baptism. This is knowing Christ now personally. And you get to make that decision. That is another opportunity for a step of discipling. There's a class set up where they actually lead them through some steps in their own life spiritually. I try, along with all of our pastors here, everything we do, we're trying to grow. I like what Scott, everything they're doing, they're working it into the fabric of everything, their missions, their youth, everything that they're doing. They're working that part of discipleship culture into all avenues of their church. And we're kind of trying to do the same thing in what we're doing here at Daybreak, that there's not just a class. We have classes, but it's not just a class where you go and get discipled. It could be in our connection group. It could be in in our children's ministry, our youth ministry. It could be in our missions ministry, serving Second Saturday, whatever. There's a constant, how are you doing in your walk? Let me go back for just a moment. In high school, I went to North High School in Evansville, Indiana. And my senior year, I had a kind of a target list of about 10 of our leaders at our high school that did not know Christ. And I just started praying for them. And I was known as an evangelist even in high school. And one of those was the captain of our varsity cheerleaders. Her name was Claudia. Her father was the doctor for our football team. Very prominent family. And I just thought, if I could lead her to Christ, the influence that she will have will be tremendous. And so our family started praying for her. I didn't know her that well, but we were in several classes together. And I don't offer this as a good methodology in leading people to Christ, but I said, you know, you really come across as an atheist. And she was offended by that, but it's not a good way to pick up a date. But as a result, she came back and said, why did you call me an atheist? It started a conversation. Later on, I led her to Christ. And here's what happened. First thing I did is give her a Bible. I gave her a Bible, and I taught her how to start reading the Bible. I took her right to the book of John. I said, the Bible is broken into two pieces. And took her right to John, and I said, just a few verses every day is something important that I do. The second thing that I want you to do, I want you to start a conversation with God every day throughout the day. Just start having a conversation. I taught her how to pray. The third thing that I did, every day you need to tell somebody your story. And she didn't know any better. She just started telling everybody, the other cheerleaders, coaches, teachers. She just started telling her story. That was very natural when I told her that. And the fourth thing I told her, I said, you need to be a part of a great team of people. We call it a church. And you need to find a church and get involved in that church. The last thing you need to do is find a place you can serve. And guys, I'm still basically doing those 5 things right now. I look at the book here by Breen, Building a Culture of Discipling. It's kind of the same thing. They go through some pathology and psychology here and how it all works. But basically it comes down just to a few things. Organic. We have a fabric in our church. Our front door is outreach. Inside the church, fabric everywhere about growing people up in Jesus. We don't keep all of them. They don't all turn out to be the way we'd like for them to be. They're not all shining stars, but I can point to a lot of our staff. Most of our staff were people who found Christ here and are now the leaders of many other people in our church. So that's just a little idea of what we do here at Daybreak.
Now, Claudia is your wife's name, is that correct?
Claudia is now my wife.
So
it worked out for him.
So maybe it is a good way to get a date for all you young men out
hey,
there.
Wait a minute. What was that question again? I should ask or call them.
I had to tell one story because
that's funny.
It is a good story. 46 years of follow-up and discipling.
That's awesome.
And now she's the executive pastor of the church.
That's great.
I just wanted to say I'm looking on the screen and I see the blue banner. So is that kind of subliminal advertising?
Oh yeah. Plus, we're selling shirts today. today, too.
Oh, okay. But I do want to invite everyone, if you're coming to the Organic Outreach Conference or the intensive training on that Friday night, we're going to have a dinner for all of the
That's right.
Wesleyan pastors who are coming. Dr. Wayne Schmidt's going to be with us, so we want to I want to give that plug for the dinner if you're coming. We'd love to have you be part of that, and you can go on the website.
You're going to be a part of it, I understand. And Carrabba's, the Italian restaurant, is going to be there providing the dinner, and it's complimentary. So it's going to be a fun evening, and just having great fellowship and asking you and Wayne a lot of good questions.
And I love Carrabba's food, too, so I can vouch. I've had them before.
That's where I was last night.
Okay, wonderful. Just, again, this whole concept of being intentional about discipleship, how is that reflected in terms of your interactions with your staff and your leadership? Because I hear just many of the intentional things that you're doing in terms of an intentional altar, a call appeal, and getting folks into, to come to the sessions to learn about the church, and then getting them into groups and getting them, learning about evangelism. But in terms of intentional discipleship for staff and leadership, can you maybe talk for a minute about that?
Yes, Kim. Every Monday morning at 9 o'clock here at the church, we meet with all of our pastoral staff, all of our directors, and they each have 5 minutes to tell what happened over the weekend, the good, the bad, the ugly. And one of the things that we're very intentional about is change lives. Tell us stories about changed lives. That's the fuel. That's what keeps us going. We want to hear over and over again how a life has been impacted, how it's been changed. If it gets too academic and I get too long and boring, I lose them. But when we start to tell stories, and this is what we really keep pushing, tell us a story. Tell us about somebody who started coming to Flood. That's one of our youth names, Flood and Fuel, junior high, senior high. And tell us how their life has been impacted and how it's been changed and how they've come to know Christ. So they're going to tell their story. Now, if that story has an edge to it, the next thing we try to do is to do a video story. And that story will show up on the big screen. And I can tell you this, when you feed your people a diet of stories on the big screen, it develops into their mind and into the fabric of their life like nothing else can do. I can stand up and give wordy stories, but there's nothing like John or Mary or Linda telling how they came to know Christ and the change and the transformation. And so a very important part of our ministry here on Sunday morning are video stories. Now, we don't have one every Sunday. We'd love to. There have been times that we've had stories every Sunday, but right now that's a little slow. But we have a video team, and nothing fancy here. We just try to sit down with an individual. Give you an example. We had a contractor here, owns his own electrical company. A neighbor invited him to come to church. He came to church a few times. And then on Easter a few years ago, he gave his life to Christ. We asked him over and over, could we get your story? He would say, no, I'm not comfortable with that. 2 weeks ago, he was in Florida. And with his iPhone, his wife holding the iPhone, he sat there on the couch in Florida, and there's my beautiful wife. He sat there on the couch and did his story of faith, how he came to know Jesus Christ. I used that at the close of my Easter message. I have no doubt that story, that 3-minute story, was one of the things that caused this to happen right here. I have no doubt. It was the clincher for the message. I talked about some great scriptures. I tried to sound pretty pastoral and encourage people to come back. But that 3-minute story at the very end, that tag, when Har began to tell how Jesus changed his life. And in our community, we live in a very Reformed community, Dutch Reform, Christian Reform, Reformed Church of America. Many of the people feel that they were born into Christianity. They were baptized into Christianity. They were catechized into Christianity. They were affirmed into Christianity. And so he went through all of those steps. He went to a Christian reform school. He made a affirmation of faith when he was 12. He did all the right things. He said all of this in this little video. But he said it wasn't until I attended Daybreak on a particular Sunday, I realized I needed to be born again. I needed Jesus Christ personally. I knew him out here. I knew him with my head. I knew scriptures. I knew theology. But it wasn't until I knew him in here. And that piece of his testimony at the very end, it was the last 10, 15 seconds, was worth the whole Sunday morning, because many of the people in our congregation are either Catholic or Christian Reform or Reformed in background, and that totally related. Now, I personally followed up Harv. He's become a very, very good friend. We're backpacking buddies. We're kayaking buddies. And for these last several years have done a number of things just to encourage him in his faith, and he's growing. His son has come to know Christ. I met him at a Starbucks. He was having all kinds of trouble in his marriage. He was an alcoholic. And right there at Starbucks, led him to Christ. Now he's involved in one of our ministries here at Daybreak, along with his wife and his children. And this story just keeps multiplying. It just keeps growing. It keeps growing. That's just one family. But that's a culture of discipleship that envelops the whole church, just like what Scott was teaching a while ago, how his church is incorporating this in every avenue, every phase of his church.
Wes, that's great. We had something that came in from our chat room again, and you mentioned 5 things earlier. You held your hand up, and you mentioned 5, and I hope you remember them, because someone in the chat room said...
If I don't remember them, I'll make them up because I'm a preacher.
That's how we roll. So coming from the chat room, they asked, would you repeat that? So I want you to do that, and then after you repeat that, we have a 1-minute prayer as we think in terms of, you know, we're all on this journey of getting better at being intentional about discipleship. So a 1-minute prayer, and then we'll close out. So challenge for a preacher, I know.
Number 1, I gave her a Bible, and we put the date in it. Number 2, I taught her how to pray. And like Mother Teresa used to say, most prayers are just listening to God. Number 3 is to tell your story, and that's what she started telling, how she came to Christ. Number 4, find a church, and she actually started going to my church. And number 5, find a place to serve. Those are five pillars that we taught. Listen to this, 48 years ago. I can't believe I'm saying that, 48 years ago. And now she's teaching those same pillars to other people. Now that's taken on a lot of different pieces. Did you want me to pray?
I want you, a 1-minute prayer, and then I'm going to close.
Okay. I hope somebody's watching their clock. God, thank you so much. Thank you so much for Kim and Dan and Scott, and for a host of people out there today that love you and love your church. I want to thank you for Kim and the way she's leading our denomination when it comes to discipleship. Lord, I just pray that this will become contagious, it will become a movement, and that it will spark in all of our lives as well as our local churches. Bless what has been said here today and multiply it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So thankful to you, Wes and Scott, for joining us today and just kind of sharing from your own experience. This is an ongoing conversation, so we know that there's so much more to be said. But for today, we're going to have to close out. Thank you, Dan, for sitting in.
Glad to be here as well.
Okay. You can look forward to, we're going to just be walking through in the next webinars, walking through the prompts. We did intentional today, and we're just going to walk through those 5 prompts. The next one will be relational. But I just want to say thank you again to all of you who are tuned in, and I want to say, may you go forward in God's peace.